record. Going live. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good day, Internet.
Good day, Internet.
Good day, Internet.
Good morning, Julia.
Hey, Len's back.
Hey, it's Len. It's
That's
Len.
right.
It's Len.
Yes. I actually get to see my daughter-in-law Julia this weekend, so I gotta say that to her. I have to remember that.
Oh, I have a feeling you won't forget.
Right.
I'm sure my son says that to her every day.
Julia.
Good morning, Julia.
Is Julia, the daughter-in-law, aware of Good Morning, Julia?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, my son, her husband, was the one who made us aware of it.
Yes.
That's why it was so funny. But yes, it's good to be back, everybody. Thank you for welcoming me back.
Well, Good Day Internet is the midday afternoon drive show for the internet to make your heart feel better every day and
heart healthy.
Yeah, and we do it a little better when Len's here. I gotta say.
Well, thank you. Well, Fridays are
Len's
always
like
fun.
our garlic.
Thank you.
Makes
I love
everything
being
better.
compared to
In a
garlic.
healthy sort of way.
Yeah.
Not in a repelling vampires.
I also
either
not
way,
in
I'm
a
okay.
That's good too.
Smell it on your breath kind of way.
I love garlic, so I'm okay with it.
Yeah,
Garlic.
one of them.
Everyone with the garlic.
It's a garlic across the board.
So if you were in the Discord, you heard my story about
Bug consumption.
Bug. Yeah. So unfortunately that's lost to the ether. So you only can hear that story if you were.
Yeah, Discord, that's kind of the carpe diem way of listening. You're a patron, you show up early, you gamble on whether we're going to go live a little early or not, and then so every once in a while you get a story about Len eating a bug, and all you take with you is your memories of that story.
That's right. Having a crawl back afterwards too. So you missed all that, unfortunately. But a couple weeks ago on the show, I was getting ready to have a few things installed into my house, and they were successfully installed.
You teched up your entertainment center quite a bit.
I did tech it up, man.
So which mesh Wi-Fi did you end up with?
We ended up getting an Orbi.
Okay.
The Orbi, which is pretty good so far. It's funny because I had 3 things being put in that day. I was having a mesh network put in, I was having a brand new home theater put in, and I was getting outdoor speakers, Sonance or Sonos speakers put in. And so they were like guys here all day kind of putting stuff in. So by the time they got to the network, there's a guy working on it, and he just sort of like set it up and everything was working. And then he didn't really teach me how to do it. Like I had no way, I had no understanding of how to like access it or change it or anything. So I'm like, I usually do that from my computer, but now everything is on my phone.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I mean, it's easy, but he should have showed you.
He did.
Like,
he eventually someone did, or I might have figured it out myself. So.
I mean, it's not that hard to figure out. You download the app and then you look at the app, and it's all generally in these systems. Mine's Eero, but they're all pretty similar in how they work.
Raj, can you hear us?
Hello. Yes.
Hey, Raj.
Raj.
Hey.
Welcome. We are live on Twitch already, just so you know.
Very good. I've only got the iPod microphone with me, so
Sounded pretty good for that.
apologies.
You know what, Raj? I just ate the last of the Milano cookies you left at my house last night.
Oh, it's perfect time. Are you telling me that you want more now? Is
I was about to, could you visit again? No, it's funny because when you left them, I was like, Raj left some cookies because he didn't have room in his bags, and it was nice of him to give them to me. He also gave me some Tim Tams, which was extra nice. Tim Tams didn't last very long, but I was worried about those cookies. I'm like, I'm probably just going to eat them all, and then I'm going to feel bad. But I paced myself. It was good.
Yeah, like one a day.
Yeah, not even. No.
Do you just eat half a cookie and then sequester the rest of it for the following day?
I just sort of, rationed them out.
Yeah. They're not my favorite cookie. They were totally for my other half. So, yeah.
They're good, though.
Yeah.
Not as good
I'll
as
take them or leave them. Yeah.
At this health food store I was at yesterday, you know how they'll have things right at the register for your impulse buys on the way out? There were a bunch of cookies, you know, wrapped up individually, and they looked really good. They were $4.75 each.
Whoa.
And they weren't even huge cookies.
Were they made from a special rare like?
I don't know. I just looked at the price and I was like, nope.
Covered in gold leaf or something.
I don't know. They were organic or something. But they looked good. But I was like,
They were carbon neutral.
for $2 I would have gotten a cookie.
Were the
And
eggs
felt
from
like
the
I was
endangered
flirting.
But
species?
if it looks good enough, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
From the yolks of the endangered sea turtle, we've crafted these fine $5 cookies.
Sometimes I'm like, come on.
Gluten-free organic artisan sea turtle based cookies.
For that, I'll just look at your ingredients and I'll make something.
It's the new sea to table food mindset.
Yeah, Wabbit Magic wants to know if they had pot in them or something.
I don't know. There could have been CBD. That's a whole
Yeah,
thing now.
yeah.
I didn't look that closely. As soon as I saw the price, I was like, but this is insulting. It's cookies away. And then an older gentleman behind me was like, you know, those are really good cookies. And I was like, I'm sure they are.
Yeah, but not for $4.50.
Like, also, I'm the one who makes them and sells them and prices them.
It might have been his. Yeah. I was gracious. I was like, yeah, I'm not paying $5 for a cookie.
You know, it's weird. Is you can go to like, is Mrs. Fields still a thing? I haven't seen the Mrs. Fields.
I was just gonna say Mrs. Fields.
'Cause-
I think I don't know. I haven't seen one in a
I
while.
haven't seen one in a long time, but every time we would enter a mall, I would always get like one or two semi-sweet chocolate chip.
I liked
You
their
think-
peanut butter.
Is Mrs. Fields going to come out with a line of CBD cookies called Donnie Fields? Mrs. Fields' college-age son.
Perhaps.
Well,
Yeah.
she has 6 kids. Oh, she had 6 kids.
Did she really?
How do you know
I
that?
didn't know that.
She started the company after she divorced her husband.
Where does
I didn't
everybody-
even know Mrs.
Yeah.
Fields was a real person. I
Yeah.
thought it was just the
The-
name of a cookie shop.
Len,
I just
the
remember
chat,
this
yeah,
from the website. Oh, sorry.
Len, some of the people are chatting in Discord. Others are at twitch.tv/gooddayinternet.
But the chat realm, the IRC.chat room is tied
It's still
down.
there. Yeah. There's not a lot of people in it right now.
Yeah.
'Cause most people go to the Twitch chat.
Twitch chat. So what's the URL for that?
Twitch.tv/gooddayinternet.
Oh, okay.
Or you could click Twitch chat at the top of the dock.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see myself. See, this is gonna screw me up. I'm gonna.
Well, the Twitch chat in the dock will just open chat without opening the video.
Perfect.
Or you can also pause the video in the chat. We'll keep going.
Yep,
Uh,
that's what I usually do.
This
Yeah,
is.
same.
I'm an old guy. I don't really know what's going on.
Quick, Raj, you're
Mesmerized by the sight of myself.
good with everything in the rundown.
Yeah.
Okay,
I was just
cool.
quickly reading the Adobe one. I didn't see that one before, so
Oh yeah, that's
use
a
my
quick hit.
silence.
We won't be talking about that one.
So the
Okay.
stuff in blue is just they read and move on.
Yeah.
And then for the main discussion, it's just going to be pretty much. I'll read the intro and we'll just kind of see where it goes. You tell us what you
Yeah.
think.
Cool.
Wait a minute,
yeah.
are you on NBN?
No, I'm
Yeah.
not.
I was wondering
No.
why. Like, all I've seen are complaints, but that's what people post. Like when something
I
doesn't
mean, that's
work.
true of everything, right?
Yeah,
Twitter,
exactly.
Apple,
Yeah. No, they have about a 15% unsatisfactory rating, customer rating. So it's pretty significant considering.
Oh, how should we introduce you, Raj?
I just said Reckoner. So,
Okay,
Yeah, that's
not
fine.
there's not a title or anything. Okay.
You're like writer.
No, that's fine. You can say editor if you want, but yeah, it doesn't really matter.
All right.
He is the reckoner.
I am the reckoner.
Yeah. what was
And
I
the
gonna say?
NBN is having a reckoning.
You should have that
Oh,
as a
yeah.
tagline. I reckon.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like "What do you reckon," which is
Mhm.
very Australian.
Right.
idiom.
Mhm.
I was going to say before we have we have Mrs. Fields one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's in pretty much every shopping mall in Australia.
Hmm.
It's not very popular, but it is there still. And number two, at the convenience stores, we have like protein balls. They're called like Bounce or something, like a little compact ball, and they cost $5 or $6 each.
Are they just
So-
like a bowl you eat like with a spoon, or is it like something you add water to?
No, ball.
Oh, ball.
Ball.
A ball.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember seeing those things. Yeah.
Like a cookie,
They're like
but they're just
saran
sort of
wrap,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
They'll set you back easy 5 Australian. So,
Yeah, because I almost went for one of those until I saw the price.
Yeah.
And then I went with that Sunny Oat bar thingy, whatever
yeah,
it
you
was.
still rave about those, but they're so hard to find.
I ordered one box of them on eBay, and went through that box, and then I was done. Like
Yeah.
the nostalgia for my trip ended after that box. So I'm fine now. I'm back on the Tim Tam train. But yeah, I ate those things, and I was like, they were just so good every morning as a replacement for Lara bars, which is what I usually eat when I'm traveling. But I didn't want to take them with me.
Yeah.
So,
I just use Cliff Bars. That's why.
yeah, I always get weirded out about bringing food in across borders.
As long as it's processed, generally I've never had an issue.
Yeah, but Australia has some like scary sounding rules. I know that they've rarely.
But they also had that for between states, because I was flying from Sydney up to the Gold Coast, and I remember there's all these signs like "Dump your fruit here, don't bring any fruit into
California." You're not allowed to drive into California. With
Yeah,
food.
but a lot, it's weird because a lot of those checkpoints are 50-50. Like sometimes they're open. Most of the time I drive by, they're not.
Well, yeah, it's spot enforcement.
I'm taking my Florida oranges in.
When I think it was when I was moving to California, I had to throw away an apple that I had with me. They're like, "Do you have any fruit?" And I looked down and I saw the apple, and he looked at me like, "That apple." He's like, "You had to throw it away." I'm like, okay.
What's funny is they don't. I wonder what they do. Like the smart thing would be to incinerate it, right? Because you don't want anything, any kind of. But like, what if they just put in a compost pile and whatever worm was in your apple just gets out
and ruins all the crops.
I know California's famous apple crops.
I mean, what are they trying to prevent? The fruit flies? Because they're everywhere already.
Yeah, and they sprayed for it that one decade in the 90s. Malathion. They used to make you cover the swimming pools, everything outside, and they would come in helicopters and spray everything.
Yeah, state by state in Australia, it's fruit fly generally, and some other things, but like South Australia pretty much has no fruit flies.
God bless them.
Yeah.
That way. Oh man, Len, I'm sorry that you weren't here last week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, because we were talking about like robots and stuff.
Oh, oh, yeah. I was wondering, this
and streaming. We had talked about streaming wars, and
I know this. Well, I was like, I'm coming back after 3 weeks or 2 weeks or whatever, and I'm like, I'm hoping this drawing is like, wow, that's worth the wait.
Oh, I'm sure it will be. You always make gold out of whatever we throw at you.
Well, thank you. I hope it is worth the wait.
I'm sure it will be.
I'm sure it will be.
There we go. Do I sound better now?
Hello.
Hello, test. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sound better?
You sound great.
Okay, good. So noticing it's probably using the wrong mic on me here. All right. Good.
Okay, folks, you about ready to do a show?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm about ready to do a show.
Absolument.
Here we go. In 3, 2. Coming up on DTNS, Huawei's new operating system. Why isn't LinkedIn a cesspool? And the scoop on Australia's national broadband network. This is the Daily Tech News for Friday, August 9th, 2019 in Los Angeles. I'm Tom Merritt.
And from Studio Feline, I'm Sarah Lane.
I'm back in black. I hit the sack. I'm Len Peralta.
And on the show's producer, Roger Chang.
Joining us today, Raj Diut from Reckoner is with us. Welcome back, Raj.
Thanks for having me.
And we should also be welcoming back Len Peralta. Has been gone for a couple of weeks being Professor Peralta.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. It's great to be back. And hopefully my artistic vision will add plenty to the show.
We were just talking about the various overpriced snacks you can get in various parts of the world on Good Day Internet. If that sounds interesting to you, if you want to hang out with us before the show, you can become a member and get that and more at patreon.com/DTNS. Let's start with a few tech things you should know.
Adobe says its upcoming apps, Aero, Fresco, and Photoshop for iPad, will focus on experiences, quote, outside the glass. Read AR, and be fluid between mobile and desktop devices. Adobe's Project Glasswing, which is still in development, uses mixed reality display to allow Photoshop or After Effects layers to be viewed in a transparent screen in front of real 3D objects. Adobe intends to partner with hardware companies to create realistic solutions for the project, such as in the retail space.
So eventually we'll be asking Len to do that in front of us. Apple's Bug Bounty program is not only expanding to Macs, but also Apple TV and Apple Watch. At Black Hat, Apple announced it will open its Bug Bounty program to all researchers and increase the bounty from $200,000 per exploit to $1 million for a zero-click full-chain kernel code execution attack with persistence. It gets less if it's not that. If a researcher finds and reports a vulnerability in pre-release builds before general release, they'll qualify for up to a 50% bonus.
Huawei announced it plans to build an $800 million plant in Brazil's Sao Paulo state over the next 3 years. As part of an agreement, Huawei will invest in the state's Institute of Technological Research between 2020 and 2022, as well as in public education. Huawei has one factory in Sao Paulo already that employs 2,000 people. Nokia and Ericsson also have factories in the state.
And U.S. Secretary of Commerce Wilbur Ross said last week his department has received 50 requests for licenses to resume sales to Huawei. However, Bloomberg reports today, people familiar with the matter saying the U.S. is holding off on decisions regarding those applications as China says it's halting purchases of U.S. farm goods. So we may not be getting that easing of restrictions that we thought. And we have a little more to talk about from Huawei, Sarah.
Yeah, just a little. At the Huawei Developer Conference, CEO Richard Yu unveiled Harmony OS, or Hongmeng, as it will be known in China, an open source microkernel-based distributed OS primarily aimed at IoT devices. Yu claims the OS is faster and safer than Android. The OS doesn't allow root access thanks to kernel isolation. It uses formal mathematical verification to spot vulnerabilities and a deterministic latency engine to allocate resources with real-time analysis and forecasting. As a result, Yu claims that Harmony OS offers instructions per clock performance 5 times faster than Google's Fuchsia and 3 times faster than QNX. Harmony OS will first appear in the Honor Smart Screen to be announced Saturday, and it'll expand over the next several years to wearables and other smart devices. For now, it still includes the Linux kernel from Huawei's Light OS kernel alongside its microkernel. Version 2.0 is scheduled for 2020 and will offer just the microkernel with better graphics support.
So my belief is that if there were no trade dispute going on between China and the United States, you would have gotten exactly the same announcement with exactly these same details, minus the reassurances that Huawei still wants to use Android and minus the speculation that, well, we could use the Harmony OS on phones if we needed to, right? Most of this announcement feels very much like it's Huawei's Tizen, or maybe as Huawei would like you to think of it, Huawei's Fuchsia, which is they're making an operating system for non-phones because they know on the world market, competing with Android is a fool's game these days. But they would like to have an operating system that would make it easier for you to write applications once across multiple devices.
Which
That's
could
the
include
promise of Google
phones
Fuchsia,
eventually.
right? I mean, yeah, exactly. It could include a phone eventually, but it wouldn't have to at the beginning. That would be kind of a long-term effect of this if it caught on.
Yeah, they were pretty careful about not saying the word phone throughout this presentation. Like they said right at the end there, but they were sort of avoiding the terminology just to put, we're not running away from Android just yet. We want to reassure you that we're putting all our eggs in that basket for the time being. I think they might have held off a little bit on this announcement if they weren't in this kind of sort of limbo land at the moment with the US. Maybe we'd hear more about it when a device actually came out, like they're talking about later on this year.
I may be wrong about this, Raj, but I believe this announcement was already scheduled like much earlier this year. But
it
could have been a different kind of announcement too.
Exactly, yeah. Maybe they were just going to talk about the product and more towards where they were moving. But the fact that they put this out there now, I think, is sort of just poking that orange bear in the US just a little bit more. And even going back to the announcement that they're building that $800 million plant down in Brazil, ironically, that's the exact thing that Trump wanted companies to come and set up in the US. So it's even more just, this tit for tat sort of maneuver that's going on at the moment.
Yeah, I think a lot of breathless reporting is Huawei's got to build its own operating system. They won't be able to use Android anymore. I mean, there's no way that this was all scrambled together in the last few months. This is obviously something that Huawei's been putting into place for some time.
And it is a valid strategy that Samsung and Google are also pursuing to come up with an operating system that can straddle across multiple devices to be the place for phones in the future. Like you said, Sarah, like Harmony OS could eventually come to phones. And the idea would be we've gotten so popular with the Harmony OS on smart screens and IoT and wearables that we're extending it to the phone because that'll make it easier on developers, right? But you need to have that momentum first. You need to have the momentum in the IoT space first. And I think that's what Google's looking at with Fuchsia as well, which is they already have Android. So it'd be a lot easier for them to get that momentum because they could eventually put out some Fuchsia-based phones. It's a big question whether they will or not at this point, but it is one of the possibilities for Fuchsia. And I think Samsung, has probably given up on the idea of Tizen on a phone, but wouldn't mind if they were able to get it into that position at some point. And it's really the only way to compete with iOS and Android right now is to figure out an end around that goes through some kind of other device to where you get developers to be able to feel excited to develop for it and then have made it easy to be like, yeah, now that you've developed for this on our watches, your apps already work on any other device. That's the promise of it. The problem is Huawei can do this in China where there's, 800,000 developers already working on Huawei. They filled a stadium for this announcement, a basketball stadium in China. But whether they can expand beyond China in the future is a big question mark too. I don't know if anybody wants to place any bets on that. Doesn't sound like you do.
Well, I'm not a betting man, Tom, but yeah, I think you make a really good point. Huawei, a lot of strength in China, and to be able to expand globally in the way that it sounds like what Harmony OS is designed to do is it's a big feat, and there's a lot of competition. Companies are doing this very similar stuff.
CNBC sources say Goldman Sachs is accepting credit applications for the Apple Card from iPhone users with FICO scores below 660. 800 is usually considered really good score. 660 or below is often categorized as subprime. There's no official designation for that, but it's a reasonable point to look at. And CNBC notes that 13% of the $4.75 billion in personal loans at Goldman Sachs's Marcus business went to borrowers with FICO scores below 660. So Goldman Sachs has some experience providing credit to people with those low FICO scores, with those low credit scores. Now, Apple reportedly wants the bank to approve as many iPhone customers as possible. And sources say the credit application process is designed, in most cases, to be completed in a couple minutes. That's to verify your identity, check with the credit bureau that you can repay your debts, and use some software from a firm called Provenir to make the credit decision. CNBC talked to one applicant who said his credit score was 620 and he received a card. But this may make more sense to you. His spending limit on the card is $750 and his interest rate is the maximum Apple gives, 23.99%.
Ooh, tough interest rate. Yeah. So for anybody saying, "Oh, subprime loans are back," these
different
are
than a house mortgage, right?
Sure. But yeah, you the lower your credit score, the less money you're going to have up front, and the more you're going to pay in interest. Goldman Sachs isn't going to be doing anything that doesn't help them.
Yeah, Raj, I don't know if you have a take on this. This isn't coming to your country yet, but are you excited about the Apple Card? I think there's a lot of breathless reporting about what seems to be a fairly unremarkable product.
Yeah, not really. From the anywhere outside of North America point of view, no one really cares. Just seeing a 24% interest rate on a credit card seems insane to me. So that's well beyond, even if you do have a low credit score and things like that, for us down under at the moment. So yeah, not our cup of tea, and not really looking forward to it coming either, to be honest.
The New York Times' John Herman has an article up called why aren't we talking about LinkedIn? LinkedIn has a news feed with comment and share buttons. At the end of last year, LinkedIn reported over 2 million posts and videos and articles coursed through the LinkedIn feed. It says it had 645 million users, 180 million of those are in North America. And yet, LinkedIn has mostly avoided a lot of the controversies and problems of Twitter and Facebook, which would be competitors. The story implies that this is because it's a more workplace atmosphere. That, and it also kind of acts as a record of you and your, job description and resume. If you're trying to look for a job, people can look up and see what you've been up to on LinkedIn. LinkedIn also has an internal editorial team of 65 who write and curate business content. And many of its best features, like messaging people that you aren't already connected to, require you to pay.
Yeah, so it's a different animal than Twitter and Facebook because you have to pay to get the most out of it. Although Facebook, you can argue if you're a marketer, you have to pay to get the most out of it too. And it's meant for something particular. And while on the one hand, it's apples and oranges, and you can't really say like, well, but these are massive social networks that are attempting to connect the world. This one was really focused just around workplace environments. LinkedIn has been able to expand its mission without undermining the quality of its community. And maybe what I'd like to suggest is that is a better way to approach social networks. Maybe the way we solve some of these problems with Facebook and Twitter is having more focused communities where people don't want to risk their reputation in that community because they like it. Right now on Facebook and Twitter, who cares if you risk your reputation with Facebook and Twitter because there's no point to it, right? LinkedIn very specifically is like, well, you might not get hired. That's a big motivator to not say something stupid and to behave yourself. But if you're in a community of like-minded people who all love a particular kind of thing, I don't know if it's a television show or whatever, you'd start to feel a little bit of the same thing. Am I crazy?
No, you're not crazy at all. Go ahead, Raj.
I'd agree about that. It's a record of who you are. Like it very much affects. I just recently had a new boss come into my office, and he already knew everyone and the sort of what he gathered as their personas by looking them up on LinkedIn. So what you share, the way you act, the way you interact with people on LinkedIn it's almost a facade of the person underneath, because it's you outwardly presenting yourself to the world as an employable person or one that's making connections in that. I kind of think of it as like the Tony Robinson of social networks. Like it's not a place where people go to sort of put far out opinionated left wing or right wing opinions on certain subjects. It's really just representing you as an employable character in the world, and very different to the other social networks that are around. And a lot of the things that I see shared on there when I do sort of bother to go have a look are very sort of corporate in nature, or a way of representing what you've done or how you can big note yourself a little bit more to make yourself a little more appealing to those recruiters or potential employers out there, rather than joining your local community or neighborhood's Facebook group and complaining that the bins aren't being collected at the right time on the day. So
yeah.
I definitely underutilize LinkedIn because for the last decade now, that's just where my resume lives. And every once in a while I go, oh yeah, I got to update that. I've been doing some things since the last time I was here. And then there'll be messages that I hadn't seen, and, because I don't have notifications on. However, many of my peers use LinkedIn the way that I use Facebook. It is a connection tool. There are articles being written, and people are giving each other accolades for jobs well done. And I even produce a podcast where recently the host of the podcast said, let's change the promo to just drive everybody to our LinkedIn page, because that's where it's going to get the most traffic. And I was like, wow, I haven't heard that in a while or ever. So yeah, I think it's what you make it. But I think, Raj, you're correct. It definitely has a corporate feel that's going to work for some people really well, and others will feel like it's not the network for them.
Well, it's got the downsides of an office aura as well, right? There's certain conversations you just don't have in the office. I mean, that's one of the positives, is you don't have people parading around a bunch of propaganda from their side of the argument, because people just generally don't do that, and if they do it in the office, it's kind of frowned upon. So maybe the key is, if you're going to replicate LinkedIn's success in this manner, it's not that you replicate LinkedIn, it's you replicate the idea of LinkedIn replicated the office workplace, the office gestalt. How do we replicate other polite areas of society where we don't attack each other? Is there a way to do that? It's interesting. Discord's going to launch a video streaming feature called Go Live on August 15th. It will let any Discord user on Windows stream video of their game. No webcam support, just of their game, to any voice channel for up to 10 people at a time. Now, Mac and Linux users can watch, they just can't stream. And if you have a boosted server or if you have Nitro, you get a higher quality stream. Admins can also turn the feature on or off at the server level if you're like, I don't want people streaming on this server. But otherwise, you can just hop in and share what you're playing with up to 10 people.
So it's a game party. It's not a way to amass millions of fans.
Yeah,
this is very different.
It's to my point with LinkedIn, it's replicating a bunch of friends getting together and watching each other play video games, not streaming your video game to the world sort of situation.
Another instance I think this could be really useful with is playing something like Dungeons and Dragons with your friends remotely. Like you're streaming your friend. I know it's not a camera, but it's sort of more of that community feel where it's just the people that's involved rather than opening it up to the public to make a way. You could use Hangouts and something like that for as well, but it sort of gives you a playing platform that you can share your desktop or what's streaming on your machine rather than just, it doesn't necessarily have to be a game, right? So it's kind of interesting the way that Discord's moving to this community sort of focused element.
I think it might have to be a game because it's using the same function that identifies what game you're playing in Discord.
Right, yeah. Yeah, but it could easily pivot if it wants to pick up. Yeah.
And the real Silverblade says it replicates the arcade feel. I think that's an even better metaphor because anybody could just kind of wander into that voice channel if they're on that server and be like, oh, what you playing? That's cool.
Definitely.
Let's talk numbers, shall we?
Right.
All right. In Q2, Uber reported it lost $5.2 billion in the last 3 months. It's a lot of money, but adjusting for multiple one-time expenses and EBITDA, which is earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization, saw Uber lose $656 million. Still a lot of money. By comparison, Lyft lost an adjusted $197 million. Overall revenue for Uber grew 14% on the year, with gross bookings increasing 31% to $15.76 billion. Uber's ride-hailing business revenue grew just 2%. Uber Eats grew 72%. Overall, Uber reported 99 million monthly active users, which is up 30% on the year, with price per trip increasing 20%. Although after accounting for driver payment, Uber saw a 4% increase in its take.
So
everybody
Uber
likes food delivery.
Yeah, Uber. Well, yeah, that for sure. And Uber and Lyft both losing money at different rates. Lyft growing a little faster than Uber, but also Lyft had a smaller rider base to begin with, so it can grow faster because it's got more room to grow. The big question about Uber and Grab and Didi and all of these is, can they get to profitability? Will they continue to get the ridership if they raise the prices? And we're seeing them finally start to raise the prices. We're seeing paying drivers more eat into the profits for Uber. Is this something where I don't think it's going to go away tomorrow, but is it going to fulfill the bet of all of its investors, which are, we understand it's going to lose money for a while. That's typical for startups. That's not a controversial thing in business. Because usually you're like, but we know the plan to profitability. We know what the plan to profitability for Uber is. It's just started. I'm starting to wonder if they can get there. Maybe they can.
Yeah, and a lot of this major loss for Uber this round was to do with their IPO and paying out shares and so forth. But they still lost a lot of money even without that. I think it was over 100 and something million. It's a race between how long can shareholders wait for the profitability versus do they lose faith in the profitability?
Well,
if they start losing,
the shares went up after this earnings announcement.
Yeah, well, if they start losing faith and that share price continues to fall, then the race for becoming profitable is going to lose out. So it's just a matter of trying to beat that bullet before investors just give up on a shaky ride that's already starting to look like the wheels are falling off.
Well, we've already seen riders complain and in some cases protest in certain places around the world that their share is going down. So the rides are up. More people are using Uber than ever. If you account for driver payment, Uber's not seeing a huge increase in its take, but if you lower the driver payout enough, then the drivers will go to another competitor like Lyft or stop working for ride hailing services entirely. So it's a tricky situation.
And according to this earnings report, Uber has been going the other way. They've been increasing the amount that they're paying to drivers. And I would expect that to continue. Because they don't want to have these complaints. The complaints are going to be there. The complaints are never going away. Drivers are never going to feel like they're paid enough. But they want to get to a point where it's not obvious that drivers are getting ripped off. And to do that, they're going to have to raise prices. And if they raise prices, how is that going to affect ridership? Or is there more elastic demand? And then Uber and Lyft and a lot of these other companies say these sort of vague things about, well, we have this addressable market of other things that we can do. And that's usually kind of a vague reference to scooters and bikes and integration with public transport and maybe even calling regular taxis in some markets. So there's a lot of possibility, and it seems like the investors still believe in that possibility, but we're starting to get to the point where we're going to have to see the possibility turn into reality. Hey, folks, if you want to get all the tech headlines each day in about 5 minutes, be sure to subscribe to dailytechheadlines.com. All right, folks, multiple plans in the United States have proposed some kind of system for giving grants or some other kind of incentive to encourage local governments or other organizations to roll out fiber to underserved rural areas. The most recent U.S. presidential candidate, Elizabeth Warren, proposed a large grant if she were elected. In Australia, y'all have done this, Raj. And in fact, New Zealand has done it too. The National Broadband Network in Australia promised fiber internet for all. Raj, how has that worked out?
Oh, where do I start? Let me tell you a story of two countries and how they decided they'd roll out broadband networks for all. I'll try and summarize it as quickly as possible. 10 years ago, both New Zealand and Australia the governments at the time promised that they would build a broadband network that encompassed a large portion of the population. In Australia, the guys that came up with the idea famously figured out the economics on the back of an envelope whilst they were flying somewhere and predicted that they could cover 93% of the population by spending around US $3 billion. New Zealand, on the other hand, thought that they could do it for $1 billion. One of those countries got it right and delivered a product, and the others is still to this day trying to catch up. And I will let you guess which one it is.
It was the one that spent less, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. New Zealand did it a little bit differently. They went, we're going to cover 73% of the population and only focus on cities with 10,000 people or more. Australia went, no, we're just going straight out bars for everyone we possibly can. That meant covering very, very regional areas of the country. Australia is quite large, almost as big as the continental US and in landmass, but only has about 25 million. So getting broadband internet to all of those people meant that they were not only trying to negotiate with the incumbent telecommunications companies similar to AT&T. Our version was Telstra at the time, and offering them about $3 billion to essentially build the network off the back of their own. And they said no, and the government decided, all right, we're just going to build our own then, which will cost us around $30 billion. And even then, after about 8 years, it was another $9 billion on top of that, and we're still not there. And there was all these sort of roadblocks along the way as to why that isn't the case. Change of governments, different ideas on technology, bringing in different mixes of technology, going from having fiber to everyone's house to fixed wireless, fixed satellite, fiber to a node, which was a box on the end of your street that they ran phone cables to, fiber to the basement, fiber to the curb. There's all different variations which have just made this turn into one giant mess that we have today. But for the regional aspect of it, that is probably the most successful part of the Australian story. For us in Australia, they put up 2 satellites they call Sky Muster, and they have a combined capacity of about 185 gigabits. and cost around about 1.3 billion to make and launch. And they work pretty well. They only have a 25 meg down and 5 meg up, so they're not exactly groundbreaking when it comes to speed. But for those in regional areas that were, I'm talking hundreds of kilometers away from the nearest town, on cattle stations, it provided access to a service that they'd never been able to get to before, or using dial-up modems over very, very shaky connections. So in that aspect of the project, it's worked really well. It's in the more populated areas, such as cities, where we want these extra speeds, we want these things to be faster and have better quality of internet, but there's been a whole raft of issues, basically, that the government sort of created for themselves in the way that they've done it.
One of the reactions we get quite a bit when we talk about the United States versus, say, Korea or Japan, and I'm seeing people say it in relation to New Zealand versus Australia, is one's bigger than the other. That makes it harder to cover. How much do you think that actually plays into it?
Look, not a huge amount, to be honest. The majority of the Australian population is on seaboards, and that's, there's pockets of population. Sydney has 5 million, Melbourne has 5 million. There's only another sort of 15 million in the country, and they're mainly in big cities like that. The biggest issue with Australia is that there was no true fibre connections in the existing network. So we were essentially ripping out all of the infrastructure and putting it in. New Zealand, on the other hand, had fibre to most of the neighbourhoods over the country that they were installing this with. So they really just needed to go that last sort of stretch from the end of the street to the premise itself. So their installation costs were significantly less because of that fact, whereas we've tried to sort of go back and retrofit HFC networks, similar to like your old cable networks in the US, and that really isn't up to snuff. And so they've ended up sort of, they bought 2 of them that we had here in Australia off of private providers, and one of them was a complete lemon that they had to just write off, and then the other one is barely holding on, and they're trying to sort of eke every last mile out of it that they can. With the US being so wide, I like the way that Elizabeth Warren has detailed her approach, in that for regional areas that they want to bring broadband to do that, they're creating a governing body that's going to give out grants and allow local councils and communities to be the ones that implement that infrastructure, or contract the people that do it. We saw fibre try and do it in Austin. That didn't really go too well because they were, again, trying to build the infrastructure from scratch. Whereas at least you have some sort of network of infrastructure that's fibre for the most part, that you can build off of as a backbone. And these regional areas, even though they're regional to you, they're by no means regional by Australian standards, I would say, or I'd argue. So I think you've got a better place setting for one of these plans, and nearly every Democratic candidate seems to have some sort of level of money that they want to throw at this. I think the worst one I saw was that someone wanted to throw $1 trillion at building an infrastructure network. And I think that would be very much going down the wrong path, similar to what Australia did. But for the others, Bernie, I think, said 20 odd, Elizabeth Warren's was 80. Those types of figures sound a little more realistic to me, and would go after a model similar to what New Zealand has done, where they encumbered 3 private companies to work under the umbrella of a new commercial entity that the government created.
Yeah, it seems like the upshot of this is, when you break up into smaller bites to chew, it's easier to get covered, and that if you don't over budget, it's harder to waste your money. And if you're looking at plans from various people, candidates, whatever, those are a couple of things to keep in mind. Raj, thanks for sharing that insight with us.
No problem.
Thanks also to everybody who participates in our subreddit, Broadband Stories, very popular there. Submit stories and vote on them at dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. You can also hang out with us on Facebook, in our group, facebook.com/groups/dailytechnewsshow.
Let's check out the mailbag.
Colin wrote in to point out that when anybody replaces a battery in an iPhone, this is in regards to our story yesterday, any battery other than Apple itself, and let's quote from the iFixit story, quote, A message indicating you need to service your battery appears in settings and then battery next to battery health. The service message is normally an indication that the battery is degraded and needs to be replaced. As we mentioned on the show, this happens even if you use an authorized Apple battery. But Colin and a few others felt we weren't clear that this isn't a pop-up message, so we apologize.
Yeah, I got carried away. I still think it's somewhat consumer hostile. It's certainly repair shop hostile. And it's probably less annoying than I made it sound yesterday. So I apologize for, I went with the culture of outrage for a minute yesterday, and it gets the best of us sometimes. Did you hear about this story, Raj?
No, I didn't. But I'm about to, or in need of, getting a battery replaced in an iPhone. So it's good timing.
Yeah, well, be aware that your battery health indicator might go away if you don't have Apple do it. So,
yeah.
All right, let's check in with Len Peralta, who has been illustrating the show. Len, what are you coming up with?
Speaking of the culture of outrage, I don't know what's going to happen with this thing that Elizabeth Warren has put forward, but I will tell you that tech will have the best slogans if they're going to be out there canvassing for full networks. A couple of them are "Why Fight Progress?" Broadband for all 192.168.011s, iScream for iStreams, and of course the most popular one is "Just Wants Less Choppy Netflix." So whatever happens with the future of a national broadband network here in the United States, that when we hit the streets, the nerds are gonna write the best slogans.
I love it. Broadband for all 192.168.011s.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't believe you gave out your admin IP address there.
Oh man, really. I didn't even think about that. Dang it. Yeah. This is available right now. This is available right now on my Patreon, patreon.com/Len, or on my online store, lenperaltstore.com.
Thanks, Len, and thanks also to Raj Diout. Raj, thanks so much for being with us today, and let folks know how they keep up with your work.
You can follow me on Twitter at Rajdeut, D-E-U-T, or you can check me out at reckoner.com.au for a bunch of tech news reviews and very Australian-centric content.
And hey, folks, if you're in Ireland or are going to be in Dublin on August 17th at 6 p.m., I'm going to have a meetup with y'all. It's going to be fun. You can show just how much more Irish you are than I am. Saturday, August 17th at Laguna. Laguna is right in front of the Mayor Square, right in front of the Mayor Square stop on the Lewis Red Line, in matter of fact. Thanks to Paolo for helping me organize this. That's once again Saturday, August 17th at 6 p.m. at Laguna in Dublin. Also, if you're one of those people who always hears people talking about public key cryptography and pretty good privacy, and you're like, I get that it works, but I can't quite conceive how it works, today's editor's desk is my attempt to explain it for the average person, the person who has no math whatsoever. If you're like, I just want to understand how this could work, public key cryptography explained in today's editor's desk, available to folks at the $5 level and up at patreon.com/DTNS.
We love your feedback. Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. We're also live Monday through Friday, 4:30 p.m., 2030 UTC. 4:30 p.m. Eastern, rather. You can find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live.
See ya Monday, folks. Have a great weekend.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
The Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Great show. Thanks, Raj.
No problemo. Thanks for having me. It's much easier when I'm in Canada.
Yeah, it helps. If people were wondering why Raj looked so awake for an Australian guest.
Yeah. I was wondering about that.
I think it's actually more because I've been awake all day and you sort of read the stories as they're coming through. It's like, oh, there's so much pressure. Whereas normally I wake up, I just walk to the computer and sit down. Yeah, this will do. It's fine.
Yeah, it's the freedom of having no option, right?
Yeah, exactly. This is, I'm going to do this thing. It's 5 a.m. Oh, all right.
Here we go. Yeah, maybe we should go back to doing the show at 10 a.m., Sarah.
Well, I don't know. I'm so used to the time now. It's like, all right, well, all the things I do in the morning, I would just do in the afternoon. Then it would be
When
fine.
we did Tech News Today at 10 a.m., I remember waking up in the morning and thinking about Sarah and Ayaz as I would make my breakfast. Like because I would already be thinking about the show and like, okay, Sarah will probably have that story and then Ayaz will be doing that. Like, it's like while I'm making my oatmeal.
Whereas before you thought about us at lunch.
Right.
I actually remember, when Tech News Today, because we started in the afternoons and then we moved to the mornings, and I thought, the whole thing's going to be weird and we're going to have to relearn our whole routine. I actually liked it better because, they're like Raj says, there's just sort of a getting it out of the way feel.
Yeah, you don't have time to screw around.
And you also can do a fair amount of research the day before, and there's just less like pressure. At 6 p.m., I could kind of look at some stories that I know we're going to talk about the next morning.
But as we found out, a lot
because
of they,
had happened in the last 24 hours, and it was kind of a nice feel. But nobody get weirded out.
No, we're just chatting.
We're doing our thing.
Well, part of it is we, much to our chagrin, we find out like some news breaks kind of toward the afternoon, which is kind of obnoxious. But.
I mean, that's why I picked, when I got a chance to pick when Daily Tech News Show went, I picked 1:30 because that's after most of the news has broken. The markets have been closed for a half hour. And it wasn't too late in the day so that, a lot of people could still get it before their day was over. There's never any perfect time though, because there's always going to be news that breaks after you're done. And there's always going to be people who are like, yeah, but now I can't get it on my drive home.
24-hour DTNS.
Yeah, right.
Well, for anybody who listens to Daily Tech Headlines, because that's a morning show,
totally.
Tom and Rich Stroffolino and I all contribute to that each week. And they're just stories that like really good stories that have to be in the following Daily Tech Headline because it was a noon story. And, we publish at 10 a.m. Pacific.
There you go. We got some good headlines at dtns.showbot.tv that people have been submitting, including Raj serves up the Aussie tech scene, Apple be bugging, no Harmony for Huawei, but it was Harmony. I don't know if that works. Apple presents Subprime Day.
That's funny.
A story of two countries, a tale of two countries.
Oh yeah,
that's a good one.
Yeah. Let's see. Nobody said phone. Nobody said phone. Pretty good. We have the Huawei.
What if we changed Zoe's A Story of Two Countries to Broadband Story of Two Countries?
I like a tale of two countries because Tale of Two Cities. Is there?
What about a broad tale?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I was trying to think of it like a telecom tale, but
a broad tale.
Yeah, we'll do that. That's great.
All right.
Co-written by Sarah Lane and Zoe Briggs Bacon.
Thank you for allowing me.
Broad tale is one word, right?
One of the great collaborations of headline writing.
It is now. Oh, me.
And then for Good Day Internet at gdi.showbot.tv, we have Len is our garlic as the top vote.
Len, you are our garlic.
Good Morning Julia is also
There's $5 organic artisan sea turtle cookies.
$5 organic artisan sea turtle cookies is actually great. I like that one.
Artisan, not artesian. Artesian water. Artisan water.
Yes, I always get the two confused.
Artesian is water, right?
So why would you?
But sometimes water is classified as artesian water.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Artesian is a kind of water,
right? And artisan is more like
it's
fancy.
Made. Yeah. Relating to or denoting a well bored perpendicularly into water-bearing strata lying at an angle so that natural pressure produces a constant supply of water with little or no pumping.
So
that's what artesian means?
It means a man-made spring.
Yeah, basically.
Hey, you know what? I could drill into my pipe underneath the house and I'll definitely get a
most of the solar guys came and did my not inspection, but sort of like site survey. That's what they called it. And found no major issues, which is solid. The circuit breaker box looks like it's fine. Won't have to be upgraded or anything. The roof's in good shape, so you don't have to do any repairs or replacement or anything like that. The only thing they found is they have the solar equipment that they have to put near the circuit breaker box so that it can tie into the electrical grid there. Where my circuit breaker box is, it has to have 3 feet of clearance away from the solar stuff. And they're like, ideally, they'd want to put it around the corner because the circuit breaker is kind of near a corner of my house. They're like, we'd love to put it right around the corner. Then it's out of sight. It's not unsightly. But they're worried that there's not exactly 3 feet to the fence that's there. And so he's thinking, well, he's like, I'll let them check to make sure. He's like, we might be able to put it right next to the box, but then there's the access to the crawl spaces under that. He's like, that might or might not be a code thing. I don't know. So we might have to end up putting it a little more visible. I told him, I was like, don't worry about it. I'm not that worried about an eyesore in the backyard. I'll just paint a mural on it or something.
Are you getting a power wall or something, Tom?
I'm not getting a power wall. I'm just getting solar panels. I looked at getting a power wall, and the guy from Solar Optimum, which is the company I'm going with, was like, you only need it if you get a lot of power outages. And he's like, you don't get a lot of power outages in this neighborhood. And I mentioned Roger. I was like, my friend in Glendale seems to get power outages more often. He's like, yeah, it might make sense for him. He's like, I know Glendale has more of those. Which I was like, okay, that's interesting. I wonder why that is.
Because we run our own power utility.
If you don't get as many power outages, then you probably don't need it most of the time. And it's as expensive as the entire solar installation to get the power.
Do you get money for putting power back in the grid?
We get credit in LA.
Okay.
So the way it'll work is during the winter, I'll be feeding more power into the grid than I take out, and I'll get credit. And then during the summer, when I'm actually probably going to use more than the sun would deliver, then my credits will end up balancing it out.
Because we used to get essentially paid by the power companies for putting power back into the grid, but they kept reducing and reducing the amount that they were paying back.
Stop doing that now.
Yeah, and it
made more sense when
the battery system.
It made more sense when fewer people were doing it, but when you have more, it's just like, it's like, all right, freeloaders off.
One of our state governments made a deal with Tesla where they've got the big battery farm, and they essentially government housing. They commission something like, I want to say 10,000 solar installations and power walls, and they're now created their own, or they're on their way to creating their own virtual power grid through all of these government-owned housing with the batteries and everything. So it's just a sort of to circumvent the entire grid.
By the way, Brad asked in Discord, he's like, wait, you don't get clean power from a Tesla house battery? And I'm like, yeah, it's clean. It's just not needed. The reason you need it if there's a power outage is you can't use your solar power during a power outage because it's unsafe. It's unsafe to the grid if there's an outage. If there's an outage, the system is set up to just kind of cut off the solar panels from feeding any energy. He said, so what you do if you have a power wall is you have the solar, like actually there's a system that will redirect the solar power into the power wall, and then your power wall can actually feed your house's electricity during the outage so you don't lose power.
Yeah, and part of it is the way electricity works. You need a certain amount of voltage and current to maintain the load, because everyone's electronics is designed, at least whatever country you reside in, to a certain spec, and solar is uneven. So you got to level it. Basically, you just need a giant fat capacitor somewhere.
And if I mean, with what I do, it would be nice to have, instead of a UPS on the floor, to have like a whole house battery backup if the price were cheaper, right? But I mean, it's tempting in a way because we have a federal 30% tax credit for solar installation that reduces at the end of this year. And if anything that's done as part of the installation, including the battery, counts for that rebate. But it's just too much. They're just too expensive.
Yeah.
Whereas with just the panels, it's going to balance out. Like with the energy credit, within like 4 years, I will have paid for itself.
That's awesome.
I'm going to have to take off, guys.
All right. Thanks, Raj.
Thank
you so much for being on the show.
Great show, Raj. Good to see you.
Good to see you
talking
all
to you
again.
man.
I'll be in LA briefly next week, Tom.
I will not. I'll be in Ireland.
Oh yeah. I'm taking my girlfriend's stepfather to Disneyland because he's never been.
Oh, that's great.
That sounds fun.
Yeah.
So, Roger, Sarah, you guys should go out of Disneyland. Meet Raj.
Yeah. Raj, thank you for the invite. We'll be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, my wife would kill me if I don't bring her and the kids.
Oh, yeah.
So it'll be a lot of us.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, sure.
Oh, and you're
More
paying,
married.
right? It's a treat, right? It's your treat.
Yeah, it's on Raj.
I have no
It's
idea
like
how
10 American dollars to $1 Australian dollar, right? You can afford it.
Yeah, I wish. It's costing like 200 Australian to go in for the day.
Yeah.
It's insane.
It is not.
Yeah, they
a cheap
raised it.
Theme park.
It is, too much.
They know.
Way too
They know
much.
how to get you.
But Galaxy's Edge. So
Well, yeah, and that's the reason I'm going. So
Yeah.
yeah. But I'm not building a lightsaber. I don't know how much they cost, but I'm not
You
building.
know, you can build those on your own, and they'll be just as cool and not as expensive.
and you can have real lightsaber fights.
The
Yeah.
bar, the cantina is is definitely worth it, but even that, you got to make reservations ahead of time.
Reservation? What kind of cantina is that? Did Han make a reservation and meet
An
Greedo so he
organized
could shoot him?
one.
No.
All right, guys. Thanks so
All right.
much.
Have
See
fun,
ya.
Raj.
Bye. Bye.
And I too am going to depart as well. So
We
Right.
Parting
you-
is such sweet sorrow.
Don't forget the
almost
blue.
like we wish you sweet sorrow. Yeah.
Oh,
That's
it's-
not
it
what
was
I-
fun to come back. I am excited to be back, and hopefully the next couple weeks. I am free and clear from teaching from now. So where my summer of teaching is over, going back to teaching in a little bit, but they'll be on Tuesdays. So I'll be here on Fridays
Oh, okay.
for as long as
will
I know.
not be here for the next 2 Fridays just because I'm mad.
Oh. It's spiteful. Oh yeah, not going to show up and do the show. I'll show you.
There's
I'll
always
tell you what it
consequences.
feels like, Glenn.
Yeah, thanks a lot for helping out. Well, we'll see who enjoys doing the show now.
You're gonna do your best ones ever the next 2 Fridays. I know it.
Well, it's funny because even when you're gone, you still kind of show up and check in and see how we're all doing. So that's nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not like Tom.
No.
This
I
is
know.
his
I'm gonna
baby.
try not
I
to do
don't,
that.
it's his baby. It's all right. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I don't even do that with my baby.
With
No one does.
literal-
Out of sight, out of mind.
Is that
fine.
crying?
First
I don't
try.
know. Turn up the TV.
Just put on Nintendo. They'll be fine. Yeah, that's the babysitter. So, no. But, well, cool, man. Well, it's good to be back. We'll see. Well, I won't see you next week, but I will be here next
We'll
week.
see you next week.
Yes.
See you next week, Glenn. Have a good
care.
weekend.
Bye.
Bye.
3592. Yes. That's the correct
2, 4, 6, 8, 3, 5, 9, 2.
numbers. All right, now we can talk smack about everyone.
Finally. So that Raj Dayut, it's so insightful and smart and enjoyable, man.
Bringing his own perspective on things.
And that talented artist,
Teaching everybody stuff.
That guy. Ugh.
Sharing
Yeah.
his gifts. What a jerk.
Yeah.
Do you know what my favorite thing to do right now is?
Dance?
Right now on Fridays or just
No, like right
at this
lately.
time of
like,
day?
what I look forward to, like, oh, when I have some free time, I can't wait to do this.
What?
Watch Cheers.
Oh,
really
this is a
love
new
that show.
obsession of yours.
I rewatched it for Current Geek, and I just kept going. I've watched like 15 episodes now,
The old TV.
How many episodes are in a season, or at least in the first
like
season?
26 or something.
And then, are you just going to keep going?
We'll
'Cause
see.
This
See how long
could be
it's
a
doing.
hobby for quite some time.
I know there's 8 seasons of like 20 plus episodes. So
Gosh,
I-
is it
it's
only
200
8? I thought
200
Cheers went longer than 8 years. Seemed like it was on.
It was 20.
100.
It was 19. I guess 11 seasons. Sorry.
How many?
Yeah,
how
yeah.
many of the cast members
There's
moved on and changed?
275 some episodes, something like that.
There was.
Was that Roger?
I'm trying to remember all the people that left over those seasons. So Coach, the original
Coach died. Yeah,
Coach died.
Nicola Santos
Shelley
died.
Long moved on.
She moved on.
That's it.
Was it like?
Yep.
Huh.
Well,
I mean,
sorry,
Frasier got the spin-off show,
Frasier
but that
went
was
to his own.
after Cheers ended anyway.
Yeah.
I thought one of the other regulars
overlapped for like 1 year. No, maybe not.
Cliff and Norm were always there.
Yep. And Frasier, he wasn't always a full member of the cast either. He was.
He came and went. Yeah, because he was Diane's like new fiance.
Right. But yeah, Cliff wasn't even a full-time cast member in the first season.
Really?
Stuck around. He was in every episode of Cheers but one. And yeah, I mean, and Carla's the only other one we haven't mentioned, I think.
Of
yeah,
course.
wait, who was that guy that was it Carla's husband?
Oh, Nick.
Nick.
Yeah.
Did he was he in the
they spun off to do the Tortellis?
Yeah, but was he in it for all the seasons, or was he only in it?
He was a recurring character. He wasn't in most episodes. I don't think he got his name in the credits. I might be wrong about that, but I don't think he ever did.
Yeah, good old Cheers. That sounds fun. I get to go to the vet and pick up my cat's medicine.
What's is this the regular medicine or?
Yeah, it's not nothing's wrong. Just
yeah, I have to find out actually whether I don't think my dog's medicine has been mailed to me, and I got charged for it.
Well, it's weird because I use this compound pharmacy for much cheaper medicine. I mean, saving so much money. And I used to have a different vet when I lived in a different part of LA. And now my new vet is walkable from my house. So this does not inconvenience me that much because I can just like make it part of Otis's walk in the afternoon. But they don't like call in stuff to this compound pharmacy that I use. They're just like, oh yeah, we don't do that anymore. And I'm like, well,
we're tired.
It's just like such an easy phone call, but okay, so I have to pick it up. And like one of them, I got in before they changed their policy, and then the other one it doesn't make any sense to me. But I'm like, it's okay, it's not that much of an inconvenience. I'll just walk over and get it. Oh. Hospitals.
R2B2 says I need "This is a square house" sign for the set, which is from the Cheers bar.
Was that a sign?
Yeah, it's a sign that when you're looking back towards Sam's office and the hallway that goes into the pool room, it's up on the wall.
Oh gosh, I can see the bar in my mind without having seen the show in many years, and like how you go down the stairs to come in the front and where people hang their coats and everything, but I don't remember anything that was like wall dressing stuff.
It's there. It's there.
What the first time I ever went to Boston, it's not called Cheers, but it's the exterior.
It is now called Cheers.
Is it now? Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know that. Well, it was
Finch.
something else at the time. Yeah. This was not recently, but I was, whoever friend I was visiting was like, and there's the Cheers bar, or what it was supposed to be.
Right.
And, the first thing you see, I was like, oh my god, take a bunch of photos. This is, before
but it looks like
Instagram, or I would have grammed that.
But I hear the inside is smaller and looks nothing, of course, obviously nothing like this.
Well, and it's like that with all the exterior places. It's,
They changed the name of the Bull and Finch to Cheers Beacon Hill, and then they created a branch of Cheers in a different part of Boston that is like the interior of Cheers.
How about that?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess they took pictures of the interior of the Bull and Finch to help them design the bar, but then they didn't really follow it. Because
it's probably because they needed the demands of like the show required a little more camera space to get.
Well, it's not just that. I mean, obviously that's part of it. You're right. But also they wanted to have that square bar. I think they just felt like that gave them a better, and like you say, a better visual situation.
Screaming Viking.
Captain Jack 913, that's where the replica Cheers bar is. And I hesitate to say that word because I know I'll say it wrong.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. Or what
And
that is.
it's an Irish word, and I imagine you could say it in Irish and be pronouncing it wrong in Boston, and vice versa. Well, folks, that's going to wrap up our week. Thank you for spending it with us.
Thank you very much.
I hope we've made your day a little better so that you have a good day.
Have a good day.
Internet. Internet?
Internet.
Oh, so French.
Well, Roger said day, right? So I said good day, Internet.
All right. Good day, Internet.
Au revoir.